Lived here most of my life, except at the start of my marriage, now my ex-husband. We lived a couple counties over for a while. I had Robbie at 19, and things were rough going for those first few years. You know, way too young, and well, that eventually ran its course. So I came back home and haven't left. I got a good paying job here in town when I first moved back, dispatch, taking calls, and alerting emergency services for the area. Robbie was my only son, my only child, and I tried my best to provide for him. Not that his father cared, hardly had any help from him. He'd pop into our lives from time to time, but nothing consistent for Robbie. And I had my fair share of relationships, but those went too. I mainly just focused on work. I suppose maybe I spent too much time at work, and if I could go back, I would have paid better attention. Robbie was a good kid, loved animals and tractors. I always thought he'd go the farming agriculture route. He'd always loved helping his grandpa around the farm, but when my folks passed, it hit him pretty hard, and he started to really change around 12. After that, he wasn't really the outgoing kind of kid anymore. Not that he wasn't kind, he was just more withdrawn. I tried getting him interested in clubs, sports, band, something to get him out of his shell, and maybe make new friends. But he mainly just wanted to stay in his room all day reading and listening to music. So when he told me he wanted to join the blacksmith apprenticeship in the next town over, I did everything I could to make that happen, which meant taking on extra hours at work to cover the tuition and to also get him a used car. We mainly saw each other in passing. I've had time to look back now, spending these past several years skimming memories, reflecting back on where I went wrong as a mother. I thought I knew my boy, but I'm afraid maybe I didn't. On that Halloween night of 2015, I got the call, ringing in just before 4 in the morning. The line was quiet at first. I started with the usual, 911, what is your emergency? I could hear mumbling, what sounded to be a male and female conversing in hushed, broken English. The line made a sweeping sound as if they were trying to cover the receiver. Hello? I asked again. Mitchell Road. The stern male voice came through, among a backdrop of fervent prayer. He continued to talk over my questioning. Send your lawmen, for the lawless children partake with demons, and have provoked a jealous God. I could hear faint screaming in the distant background before he abruptly hung up. I called it in over the radio, explaining to Sergeant Baring the gist of the call. Thought it might be a prank call, or some religious whack job getting bent out of shape over Halloween antics. Soon I was juggling multiple calls, requesting backup, calling in emergency services, when the code for dead body came through. A young female, aged 14. My heart ached hearing what was her father wailing in the background. It was a somber call to the coroner, in between calming concerned nearby neighbors who had tuned into their police scanner. I didn't even know all of the details. It was a chaotic end to my shift, and I was exhausted, having stayed a little past 5 to help relieve the brunt of the calls for the shift change. Walking out to my car, I noticed that I had a missed call from Robbie. Maybe I should have called him back just then, but I figured it was only one call. Must not have been that urgent, and I'd be home soon anyways. It was still dark out when I pulled into the driveway, my lights shining over Robbie's parked car. I remembered when leaving the station, they'd radioed in to be on the lookout for a silver Toyota. Did they say Corolla? I knew it was a common make and model. Unlocking the front door, I stepped in and flicked on the entryway light. Our cat greeted me as I bent down to pet her. She pulled away, where I saw and felt a sticky red substance on my hand. It was on the doorknob, with drops leading a trail past the kitchen to the hallway, leading to our bedrooms. Robbie? I dropped my things on the side table. I could sense something wasn't right. I hurried to his doorway, where I was met with that smoky bonfire smell. He was curled on his side, on top of his covers, facing away towards the moonlit window, still wearing his flannel and jeans outfit that I had seen him wearing the night before, his boots caked with mud and grass. He was gently wheezing. Robbie. I inched closer, reaching for his shoulder, where I got a better look at him. He was laying there, his eyes wide open, red and unblinking, as if in shock. I tried pulling him onto his back. His clothes were singed and tattered, his flesh splotched with exposed burns, some having dried, fusing his skin to the comforter. I couldn't help but scream. I was terrified. Piecing together the events that I knew that night, I was trembling, panicking. Was he involved? He just kept repeating, "She said I was next." I didn't know what to do. I wanted to help him, but I didn't know how. I pleaded with him to tell me what had happened. It pained me having to call dispatch. When I looked at Robbie in that moment, it was like I was looking at something else in the husk of what was once my son. I couldn't even comprehend his involvement of what they had said was a brutal murder. Sergeant Baring was with me as the paramedics took Robbie to the hospital for treatment and observation. Rumors swirled around town about how he had manipulated those vulnerable Amish kids. Some even suspected Robbie of having supplied them with tainted drugs, heavy hallucinogens, especially after news broke that Hannah had been found several counties over, in a rabid state. They didn't know that he was terrified of her, afraid that they would release her from the Maslin mental institution. "She's building a legion," he had warned me. "The demons. They've claimed her body as the host." You could feel a darkness closing in around us. I could feel them too. The house quaked with noise, knocks, creaking footsteps, moving furniture. I was so distraught with worry, I wasn't sleeping, growing more and more paranoid as the nights went on. Things were never quite the same after that. They seized his vehicle and all of its contents, the presumed murder weapon, and the lone incriminating items hidden throughout his room. I was with Robbie during the interrogation. Their evidence pointed to Robbie orchestrating what had happened that night, the rest having been burned up in that fire. They showed me what evidence they had, the hand-drawn ritual documents, the occult books, satanic objects. It was all so hard to understand. That's just not how I raised my son. I pleaded with them. I knew that this was more than my son. This was bigger than him. But no one would listen. I tried to protect him the best I could, but after the interrogation, I had to get him out of town. I gave him what cash I had saved up and dropped him off that night at the Greyhound station, his bus headed for Big Sky Country. Hugging him goodbye, his face was haunting, like he knew his gruesome fate. "I hear them," he had said through mixed emotion. "They're calling me." His bus didn't make it past the state line before sharply veering off course, plunging into the deep current of the Ohio River. I believed my son, and I don't think our community was ready to face the reality that that girl Hannah had welcomed in Satan himself, using her body as the vessel for evil incarnate, amassing souls and spirits, feeding her diabolic plan. Robbie was all I had left, and she took him from me.